If people were to run into me on the streets, and recognize my face from my stories, from me making dinner after work, I feel like you want to be approachable and just, again, show people that it's not that hard. I'm not a special person to be able to make all this food. It's very simple, so I think just to kind of be authentic and prove to people it's not hard.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jordan Anderson, and welcome to another episode. On this episode, we've got Blaire from the food account, Miss Finger Foodie. So Blaire is a DC food blogger, and on this episode, we kind of talk about her process, how she develops recipes, how she finds recipes, how she finds great food around town, around DC. Towards the end of the episode, we kind of nerd out about food photography and some of the tricks and hacks that she has to make the food just look amazing. Yeah, let's get started. Okay, so we have Blaire here from the account Miss Finger Foodie. Blaire, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I do apologize in advance for my hoarse voice. I'm coming off of my cousin's wedding last night, so I don't normally sound like this. So okay. We've got, just a little FYI.
We've got water on standby.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to give us a 5-minute quick intro, who you are, what you're about, what you've been up to.
Okay, so my name is Blaire. I am originally from New Jersey, and when I graduated Virginia Tech, I started out in public accounting. So I was commuting to and from home 2 hours one way on a train, which could be draining. And that was, obviously not the best way to use my time post-college, So I wanted to find certain things that I enjoyed, whether it be cooking and something.
So you're riding the train 2 hours one way.
So I'm riding the train 2 hours one way, and instead of being on social media all the time, whether it just be Facebook and constantly scrolling, I found myself constantly scrolling through Pinterest. And this kind of dated back to college as well. I remember sitting in my audit class. I'm an accountant, by the way. So audit and tax classes were not the most exciting things in college. And I can literally remember sitting in an audit class, rearranging my Pinterest boards, having a category for cookies and another one for breads and donuts and that kind of stuff. So I've always kind of had an interest in just the cooking in general. And, I can remember as a kid, my dad making fun of me of why are you watching the Food Network, and be a normal kid and watch cartoons, where I'm obsessing over Ina Garten and, instead of watching the newest Disney Channel movie. So I've always had a passion and liking for cooking and stuff. And I felt as I was, thrown into the workforce and stuff, when it came time to take mental breaks from work, I have my head buried in Excel spreadsheets all day. So I found myself always returning back to just scrolling through Pinterest and stuff, because that's what excited me. I feel nowadays you can scroll through Instagram and not be inspired and stuff. And I feel sometimes I wasn't that inspired by Instagram. So Pinterest for me was the starting point of, wow, I would always flag recipes I wanted to be using, or, something I wanted to try out, and just kind of always have a recipe to-do list. I've always wanted to make my own bread. I've always wanted to, make a full dinner, just that, you can host a dinner with friends and that kind of stuff. So I feel having Pinterest there kind of as a mental escape for me was one of my first inklings of thinking that maybe this is something I could do eventually. Unfortunately, when I was in accounting and public accounting, I didn't have the time. I'm working during our busy season. We were there until, 10 or 11 at night, getting up and doing the same thing over the next morning. So I didn't have the time to put my name on something. But as I'm, pinning all these recipes and kind of coming up with my own list of stuff, I'm why, I can do that, and I feel I've had for so long so many recipes that I had shared, whether it was in college, I remember fraternity I hung out with, they would have these a dip competition after Thanksgiving. All the guys would come back from school or back to school with all the deer that they'd hunted over Thanksgiving break, and they'd cook all the meat, and the girls would show up with different dips. So I would always bring my classic pepperoni pepperoni pizza dip, which I still have to add to the blog, by the way. But I would always bring that, and 2 years in a row it won, and they're like, all right, like this is bullshit. Like you got to bring a new recipe because this is winning and beating everyone else out. But I liked, obviously I'm a competitive person at nature, but at the heart of it, just being able to kind of, as corny as it sounds, like bring people together like over food. Like that's always been like my number one thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I kind of have like an arsenal of recipes that I'd always wanted to share. And when I moved to DC, this was like 2.5 years ago, I, again, was still in public accounting, and it was just almost like one of those things that like as soon as I quit public, and like went more on private side and I could actually have a life outside of work, I kind of made it like my New Year's resolution that I would start a food blog. I had quit my job, and then just kind of on a whim decided, I was laying in bed one night just kind of coming up with like a name, and we can kind of go into like the branding of Miss Finger Foodie, as that sounds. But I wanted to choose an Instagram name that wouldn't kind of keep me in one lane, because I do like a lot of things, whether it's baking or making dinners or really quick, easy lunches, or I don't know, I have a sangria recipe on my blog now too. So it's like, I feel like I want to kind of be a one-stop shop for like all the things, and just kind of be something that anyone can look to, whether it's you want to make a healthy meal with minimal ingredients under 20 minutes, or, kind of use your Saturday morning making a really good like banana bread recipe. So I feel like something for everybody. So I didn't want to be like, Blaire's Baked Goods, or, my mom always jokes, she's like, if you own a bakery one day, like we should call it Blaire's Buns, just like laughing. And I'm like, that would, so if I went with Blaire's Buns, that would kind of keep me in the lane of baking, and it just, so I kind of wanted to make it something a little more brandable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't want to pitch yourself into a corner, be the vegan baker.
Right.
Like,
because I feel like, as a lot of people can see nowadays, like trends come and go. Like you could be the keto queen, or, the Whole30, whatever, but I feel like at the root, I have taken Whole30 components and stuff, and thrown that into some of my dishes. And what that means is just kind of like, taking simple ingredients, nothing processed. And I kind of use those mentalities and that like method of cooking in some of my recipes. But again, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself and just like keep in just one lane of a category.
So we've got a lot of paths we can go down. Let's start with your process with recipes on your blog. Mm-hmm. So is it some of like you're finding inspiration elsewhere? Are you like testing your own recipes? Is it a blend of both?
I think it's a blend of both sometimes, because, I live right near one of the most like the best, I think, farmers market in DC, DuPont Farmers Market. It's open year round. So sometimes, if you go there on a Sunday and you pull inspiration, like, hey, this Swiss chard looks really good. There was one time I grabbed that, and I feel like I'm pretty good at challenging myself in terms of, picking new ingredients to just play with. Obviously sometimes it's going to be a bust, but I feel like with me trying to make something and, find inspiration from Pinterest. So the one day that I grabbed the Swiss chard, I kind of went onto Pinterest, just typed in Swiss chard recipes, and I found a lot of like soup recipes were coming up. So I made one with chickpea pasta and a bunch of veggies and stuff, and it actually turned out really good. So it's one of those things where, you kind of sometimes start with one ingredient, and then either you go to Pinterest, or whether you're at a restaurant and you're like, hey, this meal was like a killer meal. Like, let me see if I can try to recreate that at home. And just make cooking approachable for people, that it's like, hey, you had this killer meal at this restaurant, but if you go home, chefs at restaurants can pull from the same ingredients that you can. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I would say 90% of the ingredients, if you go to Whole Foods, it's going to be there.
Yep. And you're like, you could even like, you're saying you build recipes around just a single ingredient sometimes.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I want to do Swiss chard, or I want to do chicken, I want to do,
Yeah. So you can, whether it's basing a recipe off a single ingredient and going kind of running with it and going from there, or, just scrolling through certain Instagram feeds. Like I feel like I get a lot of my inspiration from Defined Dish. She is a Whole30 blog, and she just finds like very good ways to elevate a dish and like add flavor. And I think when people hear Whole30, they think like, oh, like I'm going to be stuck eating chicken and green beans and just like flavorless, bland food for 30 days. But that's not the case, So I think using other blogs as inspiration and seeing what ingredients they're using. So, instead of cream, I've seen her use coconut milk or coconut cream. Or, instead of soy sauce, using coconut aminos. So there's different ingredients that you can use. And it's kind of been fun, building up my pantry and building up, your staples that you grab at the grocery store. So I think it in terms of recipe development, I think it comes from either single ingredients and just building off that, or, restaurants, whether you're coming home and being like, I want to recreate this meal in like a simple way, or just other blogs. So I feel like there's 3 different paths that you can kind of really go to.
Have you ever asked a chef for the recipe at the restaurant? You should give that a try one time.
I should.
Like, this is really good. Can I like get the recipe and just like...
Honestly, I should.
The worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
Like, they'll come be like, yeah, sure. Okay, I want to ask about, because we probably need to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
What is Whole30 and how is it different than, say, being vegetarian or vegan or paleo diet? Like, what is So
Whole30 is, if people are familiar with paleo is, taking what the quote unquote cavemen used to eat and just kind of starting out at a base of seeds, like meats and veggies, So the one thing that differs...
Fruit as well?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, but not...
So just stuff that kind of comes from the earth, just nothing processed or nothing that you can, it comes in its original form, if that makes sense.
So milk, but not cheese, or like, what about milk?
No, no dairy.
Okay.
Yeah. So and
that's paleo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Whole30 kind of takes it a next step of doing... it cuts out legumes, so you can't have like any beans or any of that. So it's just more of like a strict paleo.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No beans, no soy, no wheat, corn, anything like that.
Yeah.
Grains,
so there's certain things
rice.
there's certain things that would be considered paleo that aren't considered Whole30, like edamame, if that makes sense. Like I'm obsessed with edamame pasta. Explore Cuisine is my favorite brand for that, and if you haven't tried it yet, their edamame pasta is killer, and has almost double the fiber and really great protein content. So yeah, try that with like some marinara sauce, and you got yourself a good meal.
Nice. What about because my wife is on Whole30 and she's almost done with it, so by proxy that makes me on Whole30. She talks about that you can't have even what I would call like analog food.
Right.
So food that is technically inside the diet, the ingredients are good,
right,
but it looks like something else.
Right. So what's a good example? So like there's
like a cupcake or pasta.
Right. That all the ingredients fall in there. And there's a brand of tortilla chips that I love, Siete chips. Those chips, if you look at the ingredients, they fall under the category, they're fried, I believe, in like coconut oil or just, but I think it's more so not about replacing like your favorite foods and being like, oh, how can I find like a healthy way to eat it? It's more just like, getting down to simple.
I mean, what about, because you're trying to like, there's also the macro side, you're trying to like balance your fats and proteins and carbs, but you're not... I feel like with your carbs, you can't have rice, you can't have bread, so you make that up with your vegetables and your fruits.
Right. Yeah.
And then you get your protein, obviously, from meat, not dairy.
Yeah. And
then your fats are coming from coconuts, coconut oil.
Yeah. I feel like you see a lot of
oil.
coconut products with Whole30, just like, because like I was saying before, instead of using, heavy cream in a pasta sauce, you could use coconut cream. So
do you understand? Like, because there's some things my wife will tell me about the Whole30. I'm like, I don't quite understand, or like, what's the science behind this, or like, is there? Or it's like, or it's like it's more about just finding, because she always tells me it's always about finding the foods that make you feel good,
right,
that don't upset your stomach, that don't upset everything else.
So I think people who do it originally, so like I did it for like 2 weeks just to, honestly, I used that as inspiration to create recipes, to get new ingredients to kind of play with, essentially. And with those 2 weeks, I feel like I was more mindful on what ingredients I was like putting into my diet, and just, I feel like you don't realize what or like where you can find all this like added sugar into different ingredients. So like, for example, like pasta sauce, for example, if you have, if you look at the label, I would say like 90% of the ones that you find in a grocery store have sugar added to it. So it's about like, finding it's like essentially back to the basics.
Whole ingredients.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, because there's like, I always tell this about people, they talk about like vegans are crazy. How can you eat like a vegan? But it's like, there are bad vegans out there.
Right.
Like you can eat French fries and potato chips.
Exactly.
Totally vegan. Like,
yeah. So I think backing up too, I think some people do Whole30 to try to see what in their diet is like a trigger for them. So after the 30 days, there's this reintroduction, and I honestly can't speak much to it because I've never done it. But like, if you start adding dairy back slowly, or you start adding back things you quote unquote weren't allowed, I think that could raise some red flags, or raise an alarm of like, this is what initially was bothering me. So I think there's people out there doing it for different reasons. I more so was looking to cook with simpler ingredients and be a little more mindful about the ingredients that I was like actually consuming, because I personally don't think I have issues with dairy or issues with wheat or whatever. So I was more in it for the basic cooking mindset of it.
Yeah. What initially got you into that? What got you into like eating healthy? Did you eat healthy as a kid?
Absolutely not. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I was the standard pizza, chicken nugget, bagel, pasta kid. And when I think I was 15, 16, I started working at a snack bar on the beach. And the women who kind of ran it, they were very into us, trying all of the different specials that they had for the day. And I think by doing that constantly, just like being offered like all these things, be like, oh, like you have to try this, or just being a little more open to it, like I probably think like the first time I had a salad, I was like 13. Like I was very against, just like, I just didn't have a good palate. Like I just didn't appreciate good food. And now I look back, I'm like, Christ, like I was missing out on so much good stuff. Like,
yeah, fresh ingredients.
Yeah.
I was the same way.
Yeah. Like it's just crazy how I don't know if your taste buds just changed, but mine took a full like 360 turn, just like, from then to now.
So you're like early high school that you really start to like introduce more fresher ingredients.
Yeah, I would say. And it's not like, it wasn't like I was taking control of the cooking at home, or, every now and then I would help out my mom in the kitchen and stuff. But I think it was towards college that I started to, since I was on my own cooking, I felt like I started to appreciate, more of that aspect of it, because I've always enjoyed baking. Baking and cooking are, I feel like, two completely different passions of mine now. Baking was always number one, and I feel like as I've become older, cooking has become number two. But when I was at Virginia Tech, obviously we have like or I shouldn't say obviously, but if you don't know, the Virginia Tech's dining is absolutely absurd. Like I had trout, I had, you can get lobsters, you can get London broil, anything that you want, like Virginia Tech had it. So I didn't do as much cooking as a standard college student because I was on a meal plan through senior year, which is, I feel like, unheard of to any college student. But with that, I feel like there were certain times when I was forced to cook for myself when, if I didn't have class at one day, I didn't want to have to go to campus to go get lunch. I feel like I I was better about cooking on my own and cooking meals and stuff. And then I feel like once I moved out of my house post college, and then pre DC, like so when I was moving into DC, and I was starting to make my lunches and dinners and that kind of stuff, and I was not under mom's wing anymore and having had dinner on the table ready for me when I got home. I started realizing how much money people spend out to eat. Like it was just absurd that my team would go to lunch every single day and sit in the food court, and to me I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going grocery shopping for $40 a week and I can feed myself breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I have teammates who I'm working with that are like blowing through $12 a meal just for lunch, so I feel like I started to get smart about what I was buying, and just I feel like when you're sitting in a desk all day, you want to start to eat a little healthier. So I feel like that push definitely came in. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love chicken fingers and fries and pizza and all that good stuff. So I think it's just all about balance for me.
Okay. What about talk about a recipe that we could talk about your favorite recipe.
Okay.
But I feel like that's boring. Let's talk about like a recipe that's like you found it either online or you got inspired by it and you're like, I'm going to do this. Talk about one that was really difficult. That just like you just could not make it work, or like.
Okay, so I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to kind of have something on my blog for everybody, whether it's you're doing Whole30 or you're wanting to make a dinner for your boyfriend, or you want to bring a dessert to some like a gathering. So I wanted to make I was inspired by, there's this bakery in DC called 350, and it's on 17th Street, I believe. It's so good if you haven't been. Great coffee, great dessert, just like good quality pastries and baked goods and stuff. I'd stopped there on my way home from work, and just on a whim, their vegan apple loaf looked so good. And I never baked anything vegan because with vegan baked goods, obviously there's no eggs. You can't add eggs into it. So I went home and tried to make one myself. Completely flunked the first time, just because I didn't understand how to substitute eggs in a baked good.
Yeah, because there's a little chemistry that you're not in there.
Yeah. So I'm by no means a chemist. I'm more so like a trial and error type girl. So it took probably 3 times for me to get it right, just to figure out the substitutes of what I can add in to like substitute for the egg. So what a lot of people do is substitute for flax eggs. So what you do is you take flax meal or flaxseed, and you I forget, honestly, off the top of my head, I forget the ratios. Maybe it's like 3 tablespoons of flax meal to a tablespoon of water, and you just like let it sit, and it just becomes this like gelatin that you use that in place of an egg.
Okay.
So there's some recipes that you can substitute a flax egg for, and this was one that I was like just trying and Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So it's my vegan olive oil apple loaf that I have on the blog, and my favorite way to make it now is putting it into mini muffins, and it's something that is one of those recipes that you can bring and tell people it's vegan after they eat it, because I feel like sometimes people don't, my dad especially, you don't tell him up front like, oh, this is dairy free or this is gluten free. Like he wants the real deal. Like the man slathers butter on absolutely everything. Like he loves his chocolate chip cookies. Like you don't tell him that his real things have been taken away from him. So like to me, this recipe, it definitely upholds a good palate of just like it's a good baked good, but I feel like it's kind of fun to fool people that it's like, oh, like by the way, that was vegan, because I feel like people just have a stigma of like labels of that's not going to be good, or
like it's got beans in it, and kale,
like I've tried to sneak like chickpea pasta to him and like told him after the fact, and then honestly he was like, it wasn't that good. It's like, well, you're just saying that now because I told you it was chickpeas. Like, now you're just pissed. Like,
let's talk a little bit about the community aspect of all this, because you said you want to bring people together with food.
Yeah.
And I think your blog has definitely done that.
Yeah.
Like you have people that go onto the blog, they find recipes. What's the feedback you're getting from your
So,
followers, your audience?
I honestly find that I get the biggest or the most feedback when I kind of include everybody in me making a dish. So it's one thing to type up a blog post and put your recipe online and like hope that people print it out and make it. But like to me, I'm just a visual learner. So I'm kind of grabbing onto those visual learners out there with me recording me making a dish on my stories. And then I'll save those down as a highlight for people to refer back to when they like want to make the dish.
It's super simple.
Yeah, it's a very simple thing that I've gotten such positive feedback about that people are like, wow, like this is great that I can, A, refer back to it, and B, show me that it's really not that hard to make this dish. I have this one of my go-tos during the week. It takes like 15, 20 minutes. It's an apple or sauteed apple and pork chop recipe with, you can either do bok choy or sauteed kale on the side. So if you were to just print it out, it seems with you like it looks intimidating. Just, you read through all the steps and it's just, it doesn't, I feel like to me, just reading through recipes and even cookbooks and stuff, it's hard for me to picture something. But when I go and like, okay, guys, like I'm gonna make this recipe and like this is how I'm doing it. Like, this is showing them visually how thick the pork chop should be when they pound it down, or at what point do they put the apples in to saute, or what color they're looking for. Just simple things like steps along the way.
Yep.
I feel like have helped so much, and it never gets old. Someone tagging me in a recipe that has worked for them, that they're like, oh my God, this is so good. Like, refer back to Miss Finger Foodie for this recipe. And that, seriously, I don't think that will ever get old.
And are there any stories where you've had like people come to you with like health concerns, or like you've changed my life, or like you have any of those kind of stories?
Not necessarily changed my life, but I think just showing people that it's not that hard. I've had multiple people come up to or respond in DMs or even in person being like, wow, like I get sauteed scallops all the time at restaurants, but I've been so afraid to try them at home by myself. So honestly, like, thank you for showing me that it's that easy. So for me, it's almost like, giving people the confidence to go home and try something and, pick out that weird ingredient that you had no idea what the hell it was at the grocery store. But, there was one time I made mashed yucca, and yucca is just, it's like a long like root. Like it literally looks like it's a tree. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a weird.
Yeah. So like I've had yucca before, but like I've never seen it, or like I've had yucca fries or even yucca mash. But, that was an example where I went to the store and I had to ask the guy like, hey, where can I find yucca? Like I didn't even know it was pronouncing it right, just because I've never cooked with it before. So I kind of took my followers through me making yucca mash, and it was just crazy. People commenting me like, oh my God, like what is that? I've seen that before, but I've never known what it was. Like, it honestly, thanks for showing me how to cook it. I feel like at the end of the day, kind of showing people it's not that hard.
Yeah, you're like kind of taking the risk for people.
Yeah.
Like kind of like, I've been so afraid to buy star fruit at the grocery store. I had no idea what that was. Yeah. And now I bought now watching your stuff like has kind of like, okay.
Yeah. And like and it's not like I hop on there and sometimes I just wing it. It's not like I'm cooking it perfectly every single time. And I think that kind of humanizes me as well. That it's like, it's not like I'm just posting all these like amazing recipes.
Yeah, perfect. No.
There was one time where I was making a scallop, like a summer scallop salad, and that recipe has been posted officially, so it's perfected. But when I was testing it, I was just testing it live, and I started using these frozen bay scallops from Trader Joe's. They were like $9. They're a very good price, and I made the mistake of overcrowding the pan. So with that, you don't get the nice golden crust on a scallop that you want. I think first and foremost, people eat with their eyes too. So to me, not having that golden crust and like the color like pissed me off at first. I'm like, okay, like I need to make this better. So I took it off the stove and then started I seared them in smaller batches, and that helped remove some of the liquid from the big batch, and like it worked, like, so just kind of showing people on the fly, like, okay, this is what happened, like this is how you fix it, just with like simple little tricks along the way. I think it's like fun for me to walk people through it, I think, and again, showing them like little tricks along the way.
Yeah, because you're like, as you do this, you're kind of learning. It's almost like you're building your food cooking vocabulary.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Like your little database in your mind.
Yeah.
Like, I know I can mix this with this, and it will make this,
right.
this taste like that.
Yeah.
Like,
and I know I 1000% misuse the term sometimes of like, okay, what's the difference between like broiled, baked, seared, or when I'm talking about my utensils or pans and stuff, sometimes I call something a pot, and it's just like, I'm not perfect,
Yeah.
So I think it's just
saucepan.
Yeah.
Versus,
frying pan, saute pan. Like, I don't know what the difference is. But yeah, I just think it's fun. Again, just simplifying it and essentially showing people that, hey, like I literally just came home from work. I have these 6 ingredients. I'm gonna make dinner, and this is how I'm doing it. So yeah, I think it's kind of fun showing people even how to turn leftovers into something new. One of my go-tos, my roommate actually taught me this, but if you have like any leftover Chipotle, which I know it sounds weird to have any leftover Chipotle, but if you do have leftover Chipotle, if you get someone who was really heavy-handed with the rice and the chicken and all the goods, one thing that she taught me was if you take all those contents, you throw it in a frying pan or saute pan, like I said, maybe they're the same, I don't know. But if you throw them in a saute pan and you add some soy sauce and an egg, you basically have like a really good fried rice situation going on.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. So again, like just being like, hey guys, it was Sunday last night. I went and got Chipotle and it's Monday and I don't feel like cooking anything. Like, here's what I'm doing. And I think like getting people to get their creative juices flowing and it's been fun.
And do you use that voice with like your Instagram audience? Like, I'm not saying like your tone of voice, like how, like you're almost like you're talking to your best friend.
Yeah.
Like it's not formal at all.
Oh, no.
It's just like very casual. Like, hey, what's up? Welcome.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because I was so nervous for so long to put my phone like front facing. Yeah. So I was like,
everyone is scared to do that. The
Selfie
but video.
It took me, like my friend Taylor, her account is at Roots for Boot. I was having dinner we were out to brunch and she was like, girl, you just got to go for it. Like, who cares, And it's just kind of, it's fun putting yourself out there. And if people don't like it, unfollow me, And it's just one of those things, like I'm having fun getting to know people, and it sounds silly, but there's people that I look forward to their posts all the time, and I'm hoping that people are looking forward to mine. And it just, I feel like putting a face behind the account I think it's been beneficial just because people can put a face to an account. It's simple as that sounds.
Can you talk a little bit about, okay, let's move into a really big topic, and we might hang out in here for a while.
Yeah.
The Instagram strategy, brand strategy, website strategy, how does that, like, because we already talked about like how you kind of structure the name. How have you set up this ecosystem where
it's sometimes it's a game of just throwing like stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. But I think first and foremost, it starts with like good content and just good photos.
Okay.
And I get asked sometimes how I edit my photos because I don't use a special camera. I just use my iPhone. And one of the apps that I use is called Snapseed. And there's so many little adjustments that you can do in a photo.
I stand by that app 100%.
Thank you.
It's so good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it means a lot coming
from you.
It's a
little green leaf, folks.
Yeah.
It's made by Google.
Yeah. It's actually incredible. And I'm going to just talk about like 2 quick things that I do. So when I open up the photo, let's see.
Or maybe we should back up. How are you taking the photos? Are you lighting it? Are you...
Okay. So since I do take most of my photos after work, I have an artificial light. It's in... Maybe you might be able to help me out with this. A Lowell EGO, is that right?
Okay. Oh, okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Is it?
I'm not a photographer. I don't know.
No, it's fine. Is it like a warm light or is it a cool light?
It's like a white light. It makes everything, because my apartment is very like yellow lit.
Okay.
So it just kind of brings this white light.
Okay, it's like tungsten light, not sunlight, mimic.
Right.
Okay, so a lull. I think that's like a big. So it's like a big area light, sort of.
Yeah, exactly.
Just enough to give you.
It's like a box. Like
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that just gives the
just nice even light on a dish.
It kind of like fools people to think that like that picture was taken during the day, if that makes sense. Because like I said, a lot of my photos are taken after work, or I'm not coming home during my lunch break and taking food photos. Like
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So I sometimes like I set it up on my floor or set it up on a stool, or it's just something that looks good. Sometimes I've actually recently invested in some food photo backdrops.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's subway tiles or
the fake wood
and the fake marble and that kind of stuff. Ink and Elm, they're on Etsy and they're so good. I wish I had more money to invest in all of them.
Is it like a piece of plastic that you get, or is it vinyl?
It's a vinyl.
Okay.
So for food photography, it's great because if you're wanting to get creative and like put splatters on it and drip chocolate and all that stuff, like it's very easy to like wipe away clean.
Nice.
So Ink and Elm backdrops are amazing.
Okay.
And they have deals all the time. Like I think it was like buy 3 get 1 free, or just something something really really good.
Nice.
So I use that light on those backdrops on my floor, nothing fancy. And I live in a studio apartment. It's not like I have like a room dedicated to all this. It's like anywhere where I can find space. And
you're plating it. Have you gotten better at plating things? Are you choosing the plate?
Yeah, I recently started, it's called Photography School. Sarah at Broma Bakery, she started it. Her photos are absolutely amazing.
Okay.
And so I initially purchased the Photography School before she came out with her iTography School. So I was like kind of using like her photography school and like transferring that into my iPhone, and just about like composition and the rule of thirds and having how to lay out something, because sometimes I feel like you scroll through your feeds and you're like, I want my I know my eyes like that, but how do I get it to be like that?
The why behind.
Right, why do my eyes like that, or why are my eyes going toward this piece of the photo? Like how do I
get flow of a
right? And like how do I get people to focus on the quote unquote subject of your photo? So I've used tips from that to kind of help like compose photos and stuff, it's just been fun to kind of get a new hobby of food photography, because I feel like that's something that that's never going away. People are always whether it's restaurant ads or
that's your whole world.
Right. Just like photos for yourself. Like it's fun for me to see. If you scroll back to like one of my first photos, I'm like embarrassed, but sometimes it's fun to see the progression of, whether it's just me learning how to edit better, or me learning how to compose a dish better, or just, making it look prettier. But yeah, so the light, and kind of going back to the light, if someone wants to take a good food photo and doesn't have like a fake like light or a box like I do, before I got the light, I would open up my refrigerator door, and your fridge has the best lighting. So I would set my dish in front of my fridge with the fridge open and take my photos, and the lighting is perfect. Like,
yeah, that's awesome.
So good tips. You don't have to buy anything. Just use your fridge.
I was like, she's about to say like, oh yeah, put it by the window.
No,
or like,
open up your fridge door, and
perfect.
Yeah. So
all right.
So using like kind of like all of those factors, just like kind of, and honestly, I feel like sometimes I wing it. If you scroll, like look at my camera roll, there's probably every time I take for one photo, there's probably 20 that look absolutely terrible, but and I feel like I'm still learning it, like how to take the good photo, because right now I'm just like taking them and hoping that I got one good one.
Yeah, like what you don't quite know how to manipulate what you want,
right?
And you're like,
yeah. So that's still work in progress, but
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see. It's fine.
Okay, so then you go into Snapseed.
Yeah, so then I go into Snapseed.
What are you doing there?
One of my first things I do is I kind of like my pictures a little cooler, like, which means just kind of taking like the reddish tones out of them.
A little more blue, a little less yellow.
Yeah. Although if you look at, it's kind of confusing though, because if you look at my feed, a lot of my feed is like oranges and stuff. Like I photograph a lot of brown food and, orange and reds and that kind of stuff. But I personally like the cooler tones. So I take the white balance down to decrease the temperature in the food. And then I will increase the detail. Like if you go into your tools section, there's a details thing and you literally just drag your finger from left to right to like increase the details on it. And I recently discovered the Selective Tool, which that's like,
it's the tool.
like I'm pissed I just learned about this. And I actually learned it from a bakery. She was doing like a free iPhone thing, like a quick, like, here, I'm taking this photo, like let's walk through how I edit it. So the Selective Tool is great because you basically, instead of bringing up the brightness or the structure or saturation of the color in a photo of like the entire photo, you can like select a certain area. So if you have like a dish like with cherry tomatoes on it that you want to just like brighten up just the cherry tomatoes, you can like select the Selective Tool on that, and it's great because you can kind of like manipulate it.
It's almost like cheating.
Yeah. So
or like what was a dark, shadowy photo just is now a bright white clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's perfect.
I honestly want to start doing like a before and after series on my phone.
That has been trendy. Have you seen, that's been coming up a lot with lifestyle bloggers or fashion bloggers. They'll do the perfect photo and then you swipe over to the right and it's like the behind the scenes.
Right.
And it's like, it sometimes looks like garbage.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it's crazy to
it's
see like what you can take, which I think goes into how important composition and that stuff is, of just like knowing how to lay out a dish, knowing that you can go in and edit it and make those tweaks and stuff. So I think one of the things Sarah says in her class is like, it's 51% of the photo taking and then like 49% editing, you know what I mean? So you go back and it's crazy what you can just do in an app. I definitely want to get into more like Lightroom stuff and eventually invest in a DSLR. But like for right now, my iPhone is fine.
I think your iPhone's fine. So like this photo here on the cookie cooling rack, is that?
Yes.
So that's your setup?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cookie cooling rack on the white chocolate macadamia nut cookies. So like on the bottom, I have just like the fake marble vinyl, and then I lay my the cooling rack down, and yeah, I think that one I used my fridge light.
Yeah, it looks like, and then there's some where you have like you're by the window,
right?
Which is a natural go-to.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but yeah, I think I kind of want to do a before and after, just of like editing alone, because I think
it'd be hilarious. Just like you see like your fridge door open and just like,
oh yeah,
like
behind the scenes,
half empty ketchup bottle sticking.
Yeah,
oh, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, I should probably clean my fridge first before we do that, or that would just add to the whole behind the
like
scenes.
That's just the comedy there.
Yeah, and I think that would also kind of just like bring it to light that it, you don't have to have these perfectly plated meals all the time. And it's, I think that's something that people get intimidated by when they see food photos on Instagram. They're like, oh, like, well, it's beautiful. I'm not going to make that.
Yeah.
So I think
some of it is.
Right.
But like, it's like not all of it.
Right. And I think for the people that I'm trying to reach in terms of, again, simplifying cooking, I think before and after is might be a good way to go.
Yeah, that'd be great. So then it goes straight to Instagram or like what's your process with collecting content? Do you backlog content?
Let's see. I feel like recently with me starting to delve into like the DC restaurant scene, I definitely have a lot of backlogged content. Whereas when I first started with just recipes, like I wouldn't even post anything from like a coffee shop or anything. I just was just what I was making for dinner or a good cookie recipe that I just made. Those I would do a lot of cooking on the weekends and then kind of have like a schedule of when I would be posting those based off of, whether it's a holiday or there's an app called Plan where you can say if you have like 6 photos, you can see them, you can kind of arrange them to see like what photo looks good to the next post.
Okay, this is for Instagram.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're like, okay, well, if I post these 3 in a row, like they don't really look good together. So I think it's just, again, it's about the photo individually, but it's also about the feed too. Like when people visit your profile and like you see the feed, like you want it to be like pretty, So using it's Plan with 2 N's, and just kind of like clicking and dragging and seeing what photos look good next to each other.
Yep.
And then again, finding a sweet spot for time of posting. And I've found that if I post at like between 7:30 and 7:40 in the morning, my photo gets probably 1/3 more likes than it would if I were to post it at 10. Just because if you think about it, if during the week this is, whereas on Saturdays and
weekday,
work day, I'm get out from my workout class right at 7:30 and I just hit post. And it's not like I'm sitting there creating it on the fly and like trying to tag everything. Like I'll prep it the night before. That way when I do step out of my class, like I literally just hit post. So with prepping it, that means, tagging all the accounts in hopes of being reposted, because I feel like that's how you can gain followers that way. And then also hashtags. So hashtag has been great because I don't know if people know this, but you can actually follow hashtags on Instagram. So, you can follow DC Food Blogger or DMV Foodie or just different hashtags on Instagram that other people with, looking for that kind of content, if they don't necessarily follow you, but they follow that hashtag, you could be featured on their feed, and then they could, if they like what they see, come to your feed and follow you in hopes of, like that's a hope.
Yeah, and then there's like a top section, a recent section within the hashtag.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So I believe the number is 30 that Instagram allows you to hashtag. So I think maximizing, it's like they give you 30, you might as well use all 30.
There's so much, like I've heard so many different strategies with that, and like it was different than it is today versus a year ago. Like how have you seen it, like the posting, hashtag, the tagging, how have you seen that evolve?
So I think with tagging, I don't know if brands are creating more of their own content. I feel like a year ago, brands were constantly sharing like or reposting others' accounts. And maybe this is just food, and maybe this is just the food accounts that I follow. Maybe I'm just not seeing it anymore. But my first observation was just like, I don't know if brands are necessarily reposting original content from creators, whether they're and then giving credit to that photographer. I think sometimes brands are creating their own content and then posting it to their feed, and that's that.
Or even like now the real estate is different. Instead of going straight as a post, now they could repost it on a story,
right?
Which is way more temporary, and it feels like less valuable real estate. If you kind of follow the analogy, that it's like if they were to do a repost on your stuff, say like let's say like Siete chips, you tag Siete chips,
right?
And instead of them reposting it as a post, where
they repost it as a story, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not as permanent, and like it's still like if you were to go visit their page weeks later,
it's not going to be there.
Yeah, your content. It's just their original content on there.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point too with people, I think I've seen a lot more recently like follow Fridays and stuff, like people sharing their most like their favorite accounts and stuff. But on my account, and I've contacted Instagram, I'm like a loser and emailed Instagram, was like, listen, this feature isn't working for me. Like I need it to work. I can't share a post in my story and like if I were to share a post in my story, like you can't click on it to have it go to that post. I have to take a screenshot and post it to my story, if that makes sense.
Yes. I've noticed that. It's like you want to click on it like, oh, I want to see who took this photo.
Right. Yep. So like
can't do it.
With people doing follow Fridays, like if I were to post, 5 of my favorite accounts and be like, oh, like this chicken parm recipe from Girl with Iron Cast, like I can't she doesn't really get that much credit to it because my followers can't necessarily click into it and then go to her account. They could click her name, but people are less apt to be like, oh, like let me explore like this handle if it's not clickable. Like people are just lazy, you know. So if they can't click on it immediately, they just forget about it. So in turn, I feel like because I can't share other people's content, like I would love to mention my favorite accounts and that kind of stuff, but I feel like in return, like maybe my account isn't being mentioned because I can't share that. You know, does that make sense?
Yes. And then hashtags, you use 30. I've heard people use 10, or I've heard people talk about hashtags like don't use them because if you use too many, you look like this. And
yeah,
like,
I think sometimes like I just get lazy and I just I think I max out sometimes at just like 20. Like I like for like I get to a point where I can't even come up with any more that I would use that would be relevant because if I'm posting a picture of like cauliflower gnocchi, I don't want to say like hashtag baked good or hashtag chocolate chip cookies like because it just it's irrelevant.
Vegan life,
right? Yeah.
But it's like, have you like how because people like they see hashtags and don't quite understand. It's like it's used as a search. It's used as like you're getting like into that search term.
Yeah.
It's very much like think Google SEO. Like the more hashtags you put on a post, the more it's going to be seen in that category.
Yeah.
If I think the debate has been like if you put too many, does like Instagram punish you, or if you put like a tasteful amount of hashtags?
I feel like 6 months ago, I don't know I think it was more than just my account noticing this because I was talking with other people about this. If you were tagging too many accounts, trying to be reposted by all these, it was, you know, I think you can tag up to 20 maybe. But yeah, I think it was like, you know, you can't.
Because it's like, it's a little bit spammy to some degree.
Yes.
It's like, or at the beginning like that when it was 20 tags, that's like, you're not tagging that many people for that post. It's like, it's clearly you're spamming people.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about Instagram and its connection to your website.
Yeah.
So like, is that, how do you, because some people use that as like a top of funnel. Some people use that as like, just it gets more eyes on Instagram and people go to your website.
Yeah. So with just starting the website in general, I got the help from Food Blogger Pro just to get the basics down on like creating the website and making sure, you know, I'm not a coder by any means. Like I'm an accountant. Like I don't know. I'm not a techie person. So just having someone walk me through the basics on how to get a website up and running, that's been so helpful. And also having someone help me with my Pinterest, and that I feel like that gives me so much traffic like into the blog itself.
Okay. And when you say people help you with Pinterest, what do you mean?
So I have a girl basically that I give my login information to, and she just runs with it. With follower counts, first and foremost, I'm like very hopeful that I'll get to 10,000 eventually, just because with that you get the ability to have like the swipe up feature, which means if I post something in my story, if I'm posting a picture of a recipe that I've made that has a blog post about it, or just you can find the recipe and print it out and what have you, you have to get 10,000 followers to be able to do that. So for me, if I'm trying to make ad revenue off of my blog, but I can't get the eyeballs onto my blog because, you know, whether it's low traffic of me not being good about SEO, which means just making sure that you build your post to have Google like it, essentially. You know, like, are you putting the right words in there? Are you putting the right keyword, the right amount of keywords in there for Google to push that up in the search bar? But yeah, so I'm hoping that I'll get to 10K eventually, just because, again, like the swipe up feature would be incredible for just traffic in general. But in the meantime, I'm trying to focus on Pinterest. And as a consumer, I love Pinterest. Like I started out saying, I loved just kind of scrolling through and getting inspiration and stuff from that. But at the same time, there's so much strategy behind that in general, and just, you know, when to post and, like, you know, what to repost and how to make pin boards and what group community pin boards you can be a part of. And there's so much lingo that I have no idea what I'm talking about with it. So I have a girl that helps me out that I give her all of my login information and she kind of just runs with it.
Like your Pinterest assistant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, because that's something that I don't have any interest in the short term of learning, because I'm more so focused on, the Instagram aspect of it and trying to build my blog and the website. So I think one of the first tips within Food Blogger Pro that I got, again, after building my website and stuff, was sometimes you kind of just need to write a list of things that you don't like doing and sometimes get someone else to do it for you, And so I didn't like figuring out Pinterest, but I saw the value in it, behind it, and how that could, bring traffic into the blog and Instagram and stuff. So I got a girl, Sarah. Sarah's great. And she's been helping me out with my Pinterest.
Nice. So let's, so where do you want this all to go? Do you want, you want to gain more followers? Like what's the best case scenario 3 years, 4 years from now?
So best case scenario, I would say would be, I think best case scenario has changed within the last 3 months, because I've started to realize how much I enjoy going to restaurants and photographing their food and being able to recommend certain things to people. When people text me and it's like, hey, what's a great restaurant in DC? And I have a whole arsenal of well, if you want Italian, I would go here. If you want this, I would go there. Just good recommendations. And that's from me being invited to certain, whether it's, a menu launch or a happy hour, just to kind of promote one specific menu item, or, just getting a bunch of different DC food bloggers in general to promote this restaurant in general. So I think 3 months ago, I wouldn't even think that restaurant photography would be in that category. But I feel like being able to kind of run with that would be amazing and see where that goes. And, maybe once I get my hands on a actual camera, learn how to use it really and edit photos that much better on a computer instead of just doing everything on my phone. I think it'd be fun to kind of get into the food photography business and restaurants. But that also takes me away from recipe development and, doing what I love at the core, which is making food, bringing people together, and baking, So I don't know. I think it's hard to say right now just because I'm at a crossroad. Not that I'm at a crossroads, because it's not like I need to decide. But there's so many things that I do like about the Instagram and, the blogging world, that I think I'm in the mentality of it's a marathon, not a sprint, to figure that out. So for the time being, I'm enjoying, baking using real sugar sometimes and real butter, and making Whole30 dinners, and also going and shooting at restaurants. So It's a whole mix of things.
Yeah, it's your personal brand. It's going to evolve because your interests evolve. So yeah, it would be I don't think it'd feel totally authentic if you just were to be
right. And I feel like I'm a very scatterbrained person to begin with. So
yeah.
I think it wouldn't be authentic of me to say I just see myself doing this one thing. But yeah, I mean, I grew up, and to this day I say that one day I'll own my own bakery, or I'll own my own, sandwich shop, or just really good lunch spot in Jersey. I feel like I'll see myself move back home eventually. And for the longest time I worked, and I still to this day work over holidays, so Thanksgiving and Christmas, worked at a bakery in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. Shout out to the Flaky Tart. They make the best desserts, cakes, croissants, everything. So if they're ever looking to sell one day, that would be a good opportunity for me to slide in. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that bakery will always have a special place in my heart, because that's the place where I learned, the basics behind them making the cheesecakes, and kind of seeing behind the scenes of the mass production of all the cookies and the customer service. And I feel like that to me was some of the funnest, one of the most important parts during the whole process, is why I go back to them or at Thanksgiving and Christmas is to see the customers year to year, you know? And again, seeing people, the same customers come in and have the same stories of, oh, like I use this Yule log as my centerpiece at Christmas. And I'll never forget, this one guy came in on Christmas Eve and he comes in frantic and is like, okay, I am going to my wife's or fiance at the time's family's dinner and my job is to bring dessert. Like, what do you got? Like, he was like so frantic. He's like, I need to impress them. It's my first time there. Like I'm becoming a part of the family. Like, what do I do? So I'm like, all right, like, how many people, you know, are they chocolate people? You know, would they want a fruit thing? So together we came up with what he would bring. And the following year he came back, he's like, oh my God, it was a hit. That's going to be a staple at our Christmas from now on. And like, to me, that is what it's all about, you know? It's just like, again, having some sort of connection to a cake, as stupid as that sounds. So for me, I think it's always been about just like community, and, you know, that's what I see in my Instagram and what I see in the blog and what I see in people, you know, responding to me saying that they shared this appetizer at their Super Bowl party or whatever. So I think as long as there's always an aspect of community and kind of and good food, I'll be there.
Nice. That was awesome. Okay, we'll wrap with this. Top 3 marketing branding tips that you have for young bloggers or people looking to get into
Sure.
blogging game.
I would say be authentic. You know, you want to be able to be the person. If people were to run into me on the streets, you know, and recognize my face from my stories from me making dinner after work, you know, I feel like you want to be approachable and just, again, show people that it's not that hard. You know, I'm not a special person to be able to make all this food. Like it's very simple, you know. So I think just to kind of be authentic and, you know, prove to people it's not hard. 2, I would say, and I'm guilty of not doing this recently just because I've recently started a new job and I'm kind of focusing on that. But I think consistency is key with anything, you know, and I think especially Instagram posting. You know, Instagram likes people who post every single day at the same time, you know, because that's when your photos get shown to more eyeballs. So I've seen, you know, if I take 5 days off from posting, the next photo I post gets very, very little engagement, which like I used to take to heart and get like upset about. And that sounds so silly, but like get like frustrated about. But to me, as long as, you know, I still want to have fun with it. So again, if I'm taking a break from Instagram just because I have other things in life, you know, going on, you know, I feel like the whole Instagram thing is going to come in seasons for me. Like there's going to be times where when I first started, I was posting twice a day, you know, so now I'm like, okay, well, if I post 5 times a week, that's pretty good, you know? So I think be consistent. And then with that, people come back and, you know, they expect certain content, you know, because there's certain accounts that I find myself as a consumer of content checking, being like, oh, like I know she posts in the morning, like what is she going to post today? So I think that kind of goes into, you know, being the account that you like to consume. So, you know, if you're not the type of person who engages well with stories, maybe posting on stories isn't the thing for you because you're not going to be authentic doing it. You know, like if you're someone who is following hashtags, you know, maybe that to you might mean having to post more hashtags on your account, you know, so it's taking stuff out of, you know, your brain and how you consume content and applying that to how you produce content, I think is really important because, again, I think people could kind of read through people that aren't authentic on their channels.
Yeah,
and I think
it could seem manufactured.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think also, as cheesy as it might sound, as soon as it's not fun anymore, like I feel like that's when I find myself taking a break from it because at the end of the day, this is all fun. You know, I enjoy sharing what I eat or enjoying sharing a cool restaurant that just opened up or a really good deal on happy hours around town. Just little things like that is fun. But then once you get, frustrated of, oh, well, my photo isn't getting much likes, or it's just like, it takes the fun out of it, So you want to just, at the core of it, just realize that at the end of the day, this is all fun. And just make sure that that's always what it's about.
Maybe as we're wrapping up, your favorite accounts that we can follow kind of like in parallel with you as well, to kind of like to get an idea of where you're getting inspired, so we can kind of see.
So favorite food accounts that I love are Rachel Mansfield. She's actually coming out with a book in, I believe it's February 2020, of like all of her recipes and stuff. So for her, I follow her for all of her paleo and just simple ingredient baked goods. Because to me, baking has always been my passion, but to be able to apply a mindset of mindful and simple ingredients with baking instead of, baking doesn't always have to have all the butter and all the sugar and stuff. Like there's a time and a place for that, but I think having her recipes as inspiration has been a game changer, and just like, okay, like making, really, really good banana bread, or she's really known for her banana bread, or just good pancake recipe and that kind of stuff. So for desserts, Rachel's my girl. Then Alex, the Defined Dish, she has some of the best, just like I was saying before, just good recipes that prove to you that you can use simple, good for you ingredients and still make a flavorful, like really, really good dish. And then one of my, it's funny to say friends, but through doing this Instagram thing, you definitely come to have people that you follow all the time, or, you're always commenting on each other's stuff. And it's like, I feel like I have like an internet friends, which is like kind of funny. But girl with the iron cast, she is another one who posts stories to her video, or post videos to her stories of what she's making. And it just brings the dish to life, just of what, again, seeing behind the scenes of how she's making it. And again, she makes it approachable. All of her food looks so good. She posted, one of her things she posts is her chicken parm sandwiches that her boyfriend is obsessed with, and they look so good every time she makes it. So whenever she posts those, I'm like drooling on the other end. So those are some really good accounts. And if you're in DC, because like I said, I feel like I'm trying to insert myself into some, restaurant blogging and that kind of stuff. Hungry Hanley, we actually work together in the corporate world. So it's funny that, like we work together during the day, but then we would, dip out at work and go to a blogging event together. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome, Blaire. Well, where can we find your stuff? Where can we find your accounts, websites, all that?
So you can find me at Miss Finger Foodie, and it's MISS, not MS. And then same thing with website, missfingerfoodie.com.
It's Foodie IE or what?
Foodie IE, yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Okay, so that was Blaire from the account Miss Finger Foodie. If you want to go find her on Instagram, it's at Miss Finger Foodie. Yeah, if you're looking for just like simple recipes, awesome places to eat around DC, go check out her Instagram account. Her website is the same. It's missfingerfoodie.com. Go check it out. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Leave a rating, 1 star, 2 star, 3, 4, 5 star, whatever you feel like. Leave a rating on Apple Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Jordan P. Anderson podcast. If you want to listen to some previous episodes, if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you're on Overcast, Spotify, just go to the backlogs week. This was, I think, was episode 9 of this season, so there's plenty more coming up. Yeah, we'll see you next week.